Hi, welcome everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful lunch. So we start this session with Kumar Dhanagoapal telling us about conversational writing, what, why and how. A little bit introduction about Kumar Dhanagoapal. He's a documentation lead at Oracle India, having worked earlier with Intel, SAP and BAE systems. He has delivered documentation for varied audiences in multiple domains: telecom, CRM, mobile apps, middleware, engineer system, and most recently, cloud-based services. Kumar holds a master's degree in TechCom. He has taught TechCom to postgraduate students at Christ University. He has contributed articles to professional publications in India and internationally, and also written for a textbook on editing for IGNOU. He has presented papers on TechCom at several STC and other industry conferences. Yeah, so now over to Kumar.
Thank you, Srilekha. So I need some help from you guys. Okay, I wear reading glasses, and I have this screen showing up, which is the slideshow, and I have another screen here which has the next slide, so that I know what's coming up, right, to cue me in. Unfortunately, if I wear reading glasses, I can't see you, and if I don't wear reading glasses, I can't see this. So what do I do to see both of you? I mean, there is one solution. I can wear reading glasses and look down like this. But my daughter hates that. She says I look like her school principal, who she hates, when I do that. So I don't want to do that. Any ideas for how to overcome this problem? Look at the... No, I have my next slide. So the suggestion here was to look at the big... instead of my screen. Sorry? And do this. Okay. Now then what will happen is this light will reflect on my glasses and I'll look really ugly. So, you'll see. I need focals, but I don't have the money yet to buy them. So maybe after this conference, somebody will pay me. Sorry. Srilekha, can you pass the mic, if you don't mind? So this is about conversational writing, right? So I want us to have a conversation, a real one. So I'm letting you all speak.
I don't know if it is about conversational writing, but it's about glasses.
Okay.
So we had gone to Wonderla, which is a water park, and my boss used to wear, he wears glasses, and we were in the wave pool, so you know, he made an expression saying, okay, I don't know whether to hold on to my glasses or my shorts. So my friend said, Shiv, I think you better hold on to your shorts because the others can see.
Okay, good point. So what do I do now? Is there a lesson for me here? Or okay. No, the lights are on here, so I don't have a choice. Right? So. Sorry? Short, is it? Okay, yeah. So people want me to get started. Thanks for the cue. Okay, so we're going to talk about conversational writing. How many of you have heard of this term? I'm not going to ask you anything. So if you feel, boldly raise your hands. Right? Okay, not a whole lot. Okay. This was new to me until about 2 years ago when I moved into my current in Oracle. And it's still new to me. Okay, so I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I know a little bit from my 2 years of practice and from some research I've done just for an article that I had promised to write for Udan, and I didn't live up to that promise, right? I did not. Sorry, public apologies. Okay. So one of the reasons I did not write that article is because a lot of the ideas that I was planning for that article I have used in this presentation, and I didn't want to let the cat out of the bag with the presentation. So if you give me an opportunity, I'll write an article in the future on this. So this is about conversational writing. Some of you have heard about it, which is good, but a lot of you have not, which is also good. So that's what we'll talk about. We'll cover what conversational writing is. I'm not going to go into definitions, okay? Session. You will leave this room with some definition in your mind, even though I'm not going to give you a definition. That's based on all the examples that we're going to look at. We will look at why and how it is useful, in what situations and what circumstances. And we will also look at a few practical examples of how you can turn very obtuse looking text into something that's more readable and conversational. Okay, so that's the core of the presentation. The second half is almost entirely about a series of examples that I have collated that will show you before and after, right, to see how conversational style can help. So I already asked this question, and I think we'll kind of leave it towards the end. I'm not going to give a definition at this point. So before we get into what conversational writing is, let's try and understand what it is not, because there are a lot of myths around conversational writing, particularly because it's kind of the buzzword these days. A lot of people are jumping onto this conversational writing bandwagon, right? And so everybody is coming up with his or her own definition of what it means. So let's try and understand what it is not. It is definitely not new. Okay. One of the books that I'm heavily going to cite in this presentation is by this person, Rudolf Flesch. Have you heard of Rudolf Flesch? Flesch and Kincaid readability scores? Microsoft Word? Okay. So Rudolf Flesch, of the same fame, he wrote a book, guess when? Any ideas? He wrote a book on not conversational writing, but on something called readable writing, kind of similar. Any ideas for when he wrote this book? Sorry? 70s is one guess. He wrote it in 1949. Okay. So I would, yeah. Okay. There are a few empty slots here. So people at the back, if you can move forward a little, then people at the back can sit there. I think people at the, yeah. Yeah, the other thing is if you stand, then there's a risk that you will leave. If you sit, there is that inertia, right? So you kind of, you know that the moment you stand, you'll be spotted. So nobody likes spotlights. So those who are, yeah. People who are brave enough to commit to 45 minutes of sitting can please come up front and sit. Okay, not many brave souls out there. Anyway, thanks for making some space here. Yeah. So it is not new. It is dates back to 1949. So if you get a chance, I would recommend that you read this book. It is unfortunately, I think, not in print anymore, but there are lots of, okay, I didn't say this. There are lots of downloadable PDFs that you can download and read. Okay. So I did not do that. It is definitely not writing as we speak. That is one of the first definitions you will see when you Google for conversational writing. Please write this down. This is not about writing as we speak. Okay? I'll come to the reasons about that. It is not just about little text, right? You have a big paragraph, you make it short, that doesn't become conversational. I'll show you a few examples where the opposite is true. Conversational writing sometimes leads to longer pieces of text. Okay? It's not about making things to a level where even the lowest common denominator can catch it. Right? It's not about dumbing things down. Not just that, although that is a big part of conversational writing. And it is definitely not about breaking rules of grammar. When we speak, we're not always grammatically correct. And we assume that because we're talking about conversational writing, you can break rules of grammar when you write. No. I'll come to what rules what we should keep in mind when we think of rules that we can or should not break. If anybody is feeling asleep, I'll turn the lights on. It definitely is not easy. What is the first thing we learn in terms of language after we are born? Do we learn to write or to speak? Speak, right? So in theory, we all speak better than we write, right? I see that a lot from interviews. Candidates speak very well, but when it comes to writing, there are issues. So when you translate conversational writing as is to written words, it doesn't come out that well. So it is definitely not easy, despite all the techniques you might use. Okay. So this is what conversational writing is not. What is it then? So we talked about style, right? We talked about the style being different and grammar should not be ignored and so on. Does writing style really matter? Do you think users care? Many of you think writing style matters? It's majority. Okay. So here's a video that I'd like you to watch. It's not about tech writing. It's about different kind of writing. But it'll kind of tell you about a message which I could not have conveyed better in words, right? Just watch this very short video. It's 1 or 2 minutes. And tell me if you have issues with at the back, if you can't see the video. Has any of you come across this? You have? How many? A lot of you. Okay. Okay. Don't let the cat out.
What did you do to my sign?
I wrote the same, but in different words.
Thanks, love.
Okay, this is not an advertisement for this company. Okay, so those of you who felt style does not matter, what do you think now? I think style matters. I agree with those of you who said style matters. The same thing can be said in 100 different ways, and some ways are more effective than the others, right? So that's one of the things we'll cover in this presentation. Nothing to do with this particular video, but just to hit home the message that if you've written something and the user is still not happy despite getting the information that you wanted to deliver, there's probably something that you can do better in the words that you choose and the way you've presented the words and how you strung them together, right? So that's what I wanted to you guys to take away from this 2-minute video. So now we've looked at style. What do you think about grammar? Does grammar matter? You thought I'll show a video for that? No video, but I agree that it matters. But the thing about grammar is that, I mean, how did grammar come about, right? God did not give us grammar, right? We invented grammar. So as long as we exist, we continue to invent and change grammar. So let's keep that all in mind. There will be purists among us who will disagree, but my personal view is that grammar evolves. We just need to keep up with what the current accepted rules of grammar are. More important for conversational writing than sticking with grammar is about knowing the rules of grammar so that when you have to break them, you know what you're breaking, right? A child breaks something and she or he doesn't know it's important because the child doesn't know that object. But we know that there are some things we should not break, right? And we know what we can break and live happily ever after, even after breaking it, right? So that's the power of knowing grammar. So conversational writing is not an excuse for ignoring grammar. It's more, it's probably now the reason is stronger to learn grammar in case you haven't already. At least the foundations, right? So that you know that when you've adopted a particular style and you have sent your document out for review, there are users out there who might not find it acceptable for various reasons. So when you consciously make a choice that this is a style I'm going to adopt, that's different from just writing it because I don't know grammar and I find conversational style easier, right? That's not a good stance to take. So I've just thrown in a few people at the back. Can you read this text? I'm sorry, the font is too small. So I've just given a few examples of rules that you should break. Splitting infinities, ending sentences with prepositions, starting with a conjunction. When you research for conversational writing, you will see a lot of these rules being propounded by the experts, saying these are things which will make your writing conversational. They definitely do, because when we speak, we don't follow all of these rules, right? We kind of break them left, right, and center. So it's okay to do this, but do this after you understand what a split infinitive is, right? Without that, then you would not be consistent. You would break it sometimes, you would follow the rules sometimes, and then you can't stand by it as well. That's my message from this. Again, this session is not about all the rules, all the techniques, right? So there are enough resources out there. These are more about the gotchas. As you move along, as you do research, these are things you need to keep in mind when you are doing conversational writing. So we all understand that grammar is important, style is important for conversational writing. What is the first rule of good style, in your opinion? Any volunteers? I have some goodies here for the volunteers. The very first rule of good writing: active voice, address the user, clarity, consistency, precision. It should be attractive, connect with the user. Short sentences, sweet sentences. How do you make sentences sweet? Okay. Sorry? Sorry, I didn't get that. Simple. Okay. Easy. So which of these is the first rule? Correctness of, who said that? Okay. Okay, I think both of you are very close. What I wanted to get at is, before we write something, we need to have something to say. Right? So what is, this is a very, it's got a lot of meaning underneath it. If I need to have something to say, I need to know what to say. I need to understand the subject. I need to understand it well enough that I can go down to the level of the user. Okay, not to be condescending here, but the user probably does not know what the product is about, so I need to go down to that level. I need to also be able to go up to the level of the product manager or developer to in their terms. That breadth of is very hard to get, right? That is more important. That's the first rule of style. Have something to say, and then all the style knowledge that you have distilled from years of tech writing experience, from looking at content, from training, and from your peers, managers, all that will enable you to just deliver that. But you need to have that something to say inside. And this is not something I'm saying. This guy called Arthur Schopenhauer is a German philosopher who made this statement. I think he was critiquing one of the theses written by one of his PhD students. And the thesis was so obtuse that he said, it looks like you have nothing to say. So before you start writing, find out what you want to say and then say it, right? If you do that, even if you don't have style, or even if you don't have the right style, the content is going to come out. Okay, so keep this in mind. So I'd like a volunteer, but actually I've requested Srilekha to do this. So there's a piece of text that I'd like you to read. Srilekha, can you read this? What I'd like you to do is, just in the, to make this exercise meaningful, I'd like you all, can you turn up the lights, please? Lights. Yeah. So there's a reason for turning up the lights. I want you all to close your eyes. Okay? And just to be safe, some of you are already closing your eyes, which is fine. Please wake up and close your eyes again. And look down. Okay, look down. And now I'll have Srilekha read out this piece of text to you. Okay, just pay attention. Hear the text, hear the words, hear the intonation.
Oracle WebLogic Server is the #1 application server for developing and deploying applications across cloud environments, engineered systems, and conventional systems. Oracle WebLogic Server offers application developers modern development tooling and advanced APIs for application innovation. It provides a mission-critical cloud platform for applications requiring high-performance scalability and reliability. Powerful integrated management tools simplify operations and reduce management costs. Finally, Oracle WebLogic Server provides the foundation for the Oracle Fusion middleware portfolio of products. Thanks.
Thanks, Srilekha. You can open your eyes now, in case that did not put you to sleep already. Other than the word Oracle, what else did you catch? Sir, cloud, APIs. Okay, sorry. So I think you guys are smart. Despite being post-lunch and sleeping, and you still got quite a few. But in my opinion, that's one of the worst pieces of writing I've seen in terms of conversational writing. In terms of formal writing, there is nothing wrong, absolutely. Grammatically, even according to the style rules of my company. This is from my own company, right? This complies strictly with my company's 2 years old style guidelines, right? After that we changed, but okay, that was not intended. So 2 years back we changed, and since then we're writing in a different style, right? The idea was when you close your eyes, this is actually a technique that you can use at work, right? Read your own writing or read it out, record it, and then play it back. Close your eyes. Because the moment you close your eyes, your sense of hearing gets stronger and you catch issues that you would not have if you were just reviewing content, right? So I'm not saying all readers do this. Our readers don't necessarily record or have ebook playing in their ears and so on. But this is one way to make your content sound more conversational if it is not already, right? So this exercise was just to demonstrate that it's very hard to turn content into conversation. You can open your eyes, all of you. Some of you are still closing your eyes. So how do we, so can we write this conversationally? Is it even possible? Is everything amenable to conversational writing style? Not everything. Is it even required? Maybe the administrator of Oracle WebLogic Server understands. Would it be a question answer? Yes, that could be one element of conversational writing. Yes, Amat. It's talking about me and not about the user, right? Yeah, as in Oracle. Sorry? Yeah. Saying I can do this, I can do that, but the user is saying, so what? Right? Okay? Yeah. So it can be, see, there's one argument which says administrators of a product like this don't need conversational writing because they understand the product. If they understand the product, they don't need documentation. The people who do need documentation, and they need better documentation, not this, right? So everything can be converted to conversational writing. If it can be challenging, some of it can be very difficult, particularly the conceptual stuff, but there are some techniques where you can overcome those barriers. We'll come to that. So we looked at the previous example. Let's look at why conversational writing is difficult. Okay, we already looked at the fact that we learn to speak first and then to write. That's one of the challenges. If you look at an element of conversation, right, I'm going to read out for the benefit of the backbenchers. Conversation has speech, obviously. It has gestures, emotion, real-time Q&A, right? Humor, filler words, repetition, fragments, and a lot of other things, right? We're not getting into everything that a conversation has. Writing has other mechanics, right? You have punctuation, formatting, visuals, links, blah, blah, blah. What is the overlap? Is there any overlap in the mechanics we use for writing versus speaking? Are there things that we can share? The message is common. Emotion? Emotion. Grammar? Sorry, there was... Sorry? The connect, okay? Tone of writing, question and answer. The content. Yeah, I think we've got it, right? So essentially, what is common is our relationship with the users. That has not changed, right? Whether you're talking or whether you're letting the user read, our relationship has not changed. What is that relationship? It's very simple. Our relationship has only two basic definitions. Every user has a right The word right is in emphasis deliberately, has a right to understand what we write. It's not like you understand it so you're great, that you can read well and so on. He has a right to understand, right? And we have a duty to make the user understand. That is the common factor between conversations and writing. We should keep that in mind, and then we can transfer some of the learnings from writing to conversation and vice versa, right? Always keep this in mind that we are not doing the users a favor by writing well. It is their right to demand good documentation. It's our duty because we get paid to deliver that good documentation. So what is the first rule to achieving this? It's to know your user, right? Now I'm going to go a little fast because I think I'm falling behind on time. WebLogic Server example. We need, assuming the user does not know anything about WebLogic Server, right? This is not an ad for WebLogic Server, by the way, in case you misunderstand. Right? I'm just taking that as a convenient example because it's a prominent product in our company, and now it is an ad. Okay. So you start from something that the user already understands. So don't start with Oracle WebLogic Server is this. Right? Start with what the user understands, maybe the problem statement, or even go deeper. Maybe they already know that there's a category of product called application servers. Right? You start from there. Or if you think your audience does not understand application servers, go even deeper. Right? Focus on what's more important to the user than on what your product can do. Right? These are standard rules that we follow in tech writing even today. Right? But it's even more important in conversational writing. You need to establish credibility early. Otherwise, it will look like a piece of content that I copy-pasted from my functional spec. Right? The user should be able, like I think Gareth was saying in the morning, let the user hear you speaking. Right? That comes only when I understand my product. If I don't, see, if I have understood the product and then I copy-paste, it still comes out well. Because I would make some edits which are meaningful based on doubts that I had when I tried understanding. But if I copy-paste it without understanding, then there's a problem. It comes through. It shows up as this introductory content which nobody reads, right? Respect the user, right? Again, it's not about dumbing down content. The user has a problem. He may not know your product, but that is the fact that the user does not know your product is our company's problem. It's not the user's problem, right? And we are there to help them. So, I mean, this is all standard information architecture theory. Know your user, do audience analysis, task analysis. But each user is different, right? How many of you think we have a common set of users? I don't think anybody will raise their hands now. Okay, so what's the solution? How do we understand a user if there are 100 types of users? Let me run a little exercise, okay? This is to kind of demonstrate whether we think alike or differently, okay? Think of your favorite color. Just think about it, don't say it aloud. Okay, I've given you some choices and they all look messed up here because of the projector, but they were all different colors originally, okay? So think of your favorite color and it's probably one of these colors or something else, right? How many of you thought of black? Only one. How many of you thought of white? Okay. Red? Few. So you can see from all the hands, you guys can't see the hands because they are at the back, right? So it's evenly distributed. There are about 5 or 6 hands going up for each color. So it looks like some people did not think of any color. Green, blue, quickly? Yeah, okay. Now all going up. Okay. So now let's look at another question. And in case some of you find this objectionable, please pardon me, but I could not think of a more effective mechanism to demonstrate this exercise, okay? Think of any 4-letter word starting with F. And to help you, I'm giving you this. How many of you thought of, okay, I'm not going to ask, don't be honest here, okay? Now tell me, do we all think alike? Yes? So, I guess we all think alike in some and we don't think alike in some respects, right? So the secret sauce, I think, is to find that common denominator. So you have 100 users, and 10 users want this, another 20 users want something else, right? It is very hard. It's sometimes just theory. You cannot achieve it, and you may not even have the budget to do this kind of studies upfront in most of our companies, right? So we just have to get into the document and release it next week or next month. So you may not have the luxury of doing all this, but keep it at the back of your mind that audience analysis, understanding the user is not impossible. It is very difficult, but the goal should be not to address 95 users, but try to find what is common among those 95 users, right? There is something in common. If you take a family, what's common is the fact that you're a family. Each kid is different, right? You are different from your spouse. So similar thing here, but you still are a family for some reasons because there's something common that's holding you together. Same thing, so don't become family members of your user and so on, but I'm just saying. So yeah, first thing is understand your user, and somebody else said here about the rule of writing, know your content, right? Who said this? If you can't explain it simply you don't understand it well enough. Yeah, I didn't say this, right? So if a person of that eminence can focus so much on simplicity, then we all are in the business. We get paid for writing simple content, right? And his message is that before you do your work, try and understand what you're doing so that you can understand it and then explain it well. So let's read another piece of writing. This time, no closing your eyes, okay? It's a long piece of text. Read it silently. Done? What do you think about this piece of writing versus the one you heard Srilekha narrating earlier? Sorry? This a lot of examples, more conversational, simpler, using everyday objects, right? Something people can relate to. This is also from my company. I'm proud to say that, although I wasn't proud of the earlier article. So this is the continuation of the same. So this is, by the way, an introduction to Java. By the way, this is not from my company. It's from Sun Microsystems, which Oracle acquired. So I think credit goes to Sun. So when they wrote docs for Java, this is the introduction they started with when they talked about object-oriented programming, which is such a kind of complex kind of a subject when you have to explain it to somebody who doesn't understand it, right? They've done a beautiful job. So it is definitely possible, right, to take very, very technical content and write it in a way that everybody can understand. How many of you have taken courses from NIIT? Many of us, right? If you've done a Java course or any other course from NIIT, you will see that a lot of them, I don't know about all the content because I have not taken all their courses, a lot of their content is written, I mean, the word I'm looking for is something like awesome, right? It's so good. I don't know whether they copy-pasted or whether they have awesome writers, but the content is so good. I mean, when they can do it, and see, I took my NIIT course back in 2000 when I first got into this profession, right? And if this was the case then, I'm sure that conversational writing is not new, number one. And it is quite prevalent. A lot of people in the industry are already doing it, right? So it is definitely possible. If there's one message you'd like to take out of this room, it is that conversational writing is possible, right? Everything that you write can be converted. So let's now start with the examples, okay? Srilekha, are you here? How much time do I have? Oh, that's all? Okay. Okay. Look at this sentence. What does it mean? The individual member of the social community often receives his information via visual symbolic channels. It means people read. Okay, this was actually an example by this guy Richard Feynman, who's a British physicist. He was again, I think, evaluating one of his students' dissertations, and the student had written, when he had done a study of something, that this is what his subject is about, right? He was talking about people read and how do they read, and this was his introduction to the paper. So Feynman wrote, I believe, in the margins, just changes to people read, right? Another example. Now we're looking at examples. The headings that you see on the slides are the messages that I'm trying to convey. Okay. Next message is try to make sense of abstract concepts. How do we do that? All of us are familiar with disk fragmentation, right? Defragmentation. So the original text is disk defragmentation is a process of consolidating fragmented data on a volume, so it will work more efficiently. It looks fairly easy to understand for those of us who understand disk defragmentation, but trust me, there are people who don't. So this is a rewritten version. Over time, data on your hard disk gets fragmented. When opening files, your computer slows down because it has to find and gather all of the fragmented data. You can fix this by defragmenting the disk. The first example is from Microsoft, who is actually, their writers write very well. I respect their writing a lot. But I still find this example in one of the Windows manuals, right? So that is an example that I wrote to try and introduce. What did I do in that example, in the rewritten example? Anything? Sorry? Sorry? The problem and the user is the focus now? Yeah. It feels more engaging, right? When you talk about the user's problem, the word efficiently in the previous one, I decided that it's such a vague term. It can mean different things to different people. So I verbalized it. Your computer slows down. So that means it's inefficient, right? So people get that message faster. Although it looks very colloquial almost, right? But it is nothing, there's nothing technically wrong. There's nothing grammatically wrong, nothing stylistically wrong with either example, right? But the second one somehow connects better, right? So this is an example where you can take a seemingly abstract topic and dumb it down a little bit. So it's more personal and it's scenario based, right? It's starting with a problem. So another example of how to keep things simple, okay? How many of you don't like maths? Okay, everybody is good at maths here. Only one hand went up for not liking maths. So, but yeah, a few more now, okay? So most kids hate maths, right? A lot of them do very well, but there's also this fear psychosis among children that if you are a student, you need to go for math coaching, right? And a lot of people do. I have two kids. One is in class 10, another one is in class 4. I don't send them for coaching. I try to do my best teaching them at home. But I try to use techniques like this. So this is an example that I tried at home. This is not my own invention. I took it from the web, but I use it to teach my kids, right? So this is a problem in number theory where you have a series of numbers and there's a formula for finding the sum, right? And this is how it works. Most of us know about this. That's not the problem. If your kid or your, let's say, customer is, okay, how does this work? Why is this formula always correct? Now you're getting into geometry theorems where you start proving. You derive and say from 1 to 10 that this is how the theory is right. You can't do that with a kid. You can't do that with a customer. He has no patience, right? So this is one approach, right? In this particular case, 1 and 10, you add and they become 11, right? 2 and 9 also make 11, right? So you have all the numbers in the series and you take these pairs and they become 11 and so on, right? And we have 5 such pairs, right? And 5 happens to be half of 2, right? So instead of adding all the numbers, just multiply 5 and 11. It still does not address all the underlying assumptions of the formula. What if I have an odd number of numbers? Instead of 1 to 10, I have 1 to 11, right? Then there are issues which come up. But my daughter understood this very well, right? When she was in class 6, I think, when I was teaching her this. So from then on, she understood that there is always a secret behind the formula, which your teacher does not necessarily teach. So try and find that. This is just an example to show that a seemingly complex problem can be explained in very simple terms, right? Not many words, maybe a few steps, but now the concept of adding a series of numbers is a little more stronger in her mind. It's not complete, but she feels a little less intimidated about approaching such problems. Same thing with our documentation. If you lead into your documentation with this kind of writing, the user will not close it halfway. They know that it's promising, there's something more that comes up, so let me read. Maybe I will find what I want, right? That's a problem we all face. The users don't want to read documentation. Probably because we don't explain things the way they should be. So credit for this goes to this mathematician called Gauss, a German mathematician, I think. So he is the one who invented this formula, and a lot of people, I believe, were asking him to explain the formula, and he came up with this explanation, right? So people who really understand their subject can do this. So that goes back to my earlier message that the first rule of writing is to have something to say. Gauss had something to say, he was convinced about it, and he was able to explain it. We may not become experts, but let's try and understand at least to the user's level of understanding, get into the technical depths of the product, right? As much as we can. Another example, temperature is a measure of the ability of a substance, or more generally of any physical system, to transfer heat energy to another physical system. The higher the temperature of an object is, the greater the tendency of that object to transfer heat. The lower the temperature of an object is, the greater the tendency of that object to be on the receiving end of heat transfer. A lot of words, it makes sense, and people who understand physics would probably relate to it. Can this be made simpler? Okay, so I have a video for you. Do you recognize this guy? I cited him earlier, Richard Feynman. He's a British physicist. So he has, okay, I'll come to that after you watch this video.
It's interesting that some people find science so easy and others find it kind of dull and difficult. Especially kids, you know, some of them are just eat it up. And I don't know why it is. It's the same perhaps for all subjects. For instance, lots of people love music and I never could carry a tune. And I lose a great deal of pleasure out of that. And I think people lose a lot of pleasure who find science dull. In the case of science, I think that one of the things that make it very difficult is it takes a lot of imagination. It's very hard to imagine all the crazy things that things really are like. Nothing's really as it seems. We're used to get, you know, hot and cold, and all that hot and cold is the speeds
audio clear?
that the atoms are jiggling. If they jiggle more, it corresponds to hotter, and colder is jiggling less. So if you have a bunch of atoms, a cup of coffee or something sitting on a table, and the atoms are jiggling a great deal in the coffee, and they bounce against the cup, and the cup then gets shaking, and the atoms in the cup shake, and they bounce against the saucer, and the heat heats the cup and heats everything else. And hot thing spreads its heat into other things by mere contact, because the atoms that are jiggling a lot in the hot thing shake the ones that are jiggling only a little bit in the cold thing, so that the hot heat, we say, goes into the cold thing. It spreads. But what's spreading is just jiggling and irregular motions, which is easy to kind of understand. It brings up another thing that's kind of curious. That I say that things jiggle, and if you're used to balls bouncing, you know they slow up and stop after a while. But we have to imagine with the atoms a perfect elasticity. They never lose any energy. Every time they bounce, they keep on bouncing all the time. They don't lose anything. They're perpetually moving. And that the things that happen when we say something loses energy, if a ball comes down and bounces, it shakes irregularly some of the atoms in the floor. And then when it comes up again, it leaves some of those atoms moving, the jiggling. So as it bounces, it's passing its extra energies, its extra motions, to little patches on the floor each time it bounces, and loses a little each time until it settles down, we say, as if all the motion has stopped. But what's left is the floor is shaking more than it was before, and the atoms in the ball are shaking more than they were before. That the organized motion of all these atoms moving the same way, falling down, and the quiet floor is now transformed into a ball sitting on the ground. But all that motion is still there in a form, or the energy of motion. It's interesting that some people find science. It's interesting that some people.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to skip the rest of that video. But I hope you get the message. In this case, there's again a scientist who is trying to explain the concept of heat and cold, right? In very, very simple terms. Those of you who have kids, I would strongly recommend that you watch this BBC series by this guy. It's a 1-hour interview where he keeps talking about different physical phenomena, and he explains them in so simple terms, right? And kids who have watched it really love it. And you can see here that there's just one guy sitting in a chair. There's no excitement, no color, no web, no nothing, right? But the moment you start, if you like the topic, kids have to. They don't have a choice. They have to like it. So if you want to study more about the topic, and if you have such kind of input, where I think the only mechanics he's using, other than the spoken word, his hands, right? When he talks about various concepts, he's using his hands very effectively, and maybe the intonation. and maybe the facial expressions. Other than that, it's just words. He has not used diagrams, which he could have effectively. We use diagrams a lot. So a lot can be done through the spoken word, but provided we understand our, whatever we are trying to explain very well, right? That was the message I wanted to convey from this video. So if you get some time, or if you have kids and they don't have a choice but to learn science, then have them watch. It's 1 hour, right? It's probably worth the investment. Number one, the fear of science may go away, and they may also understand concepts a little better than what their teachers are teaching them, right? So, of course, they can't reproduce the same thing in their tests because the test expects what's in the textbook. But at least the foundations are deeper, and so when they go on for higher studies and research, they actually have understood rather than studied things by rote, right? So, and same thing happens with our users. When you explain something like this, it really makes an impact. It stays with them, and they don't feel scared or intimidated about the product. Another example, right? This tutorial is about what type of applications you can deploy on different platforms. For each platform, an application will be designed. The goal. What's the problem with this whole style of writing? Extremely passive, right? It's about the tutorial. It's not about, and it's about the application. It's not about the user. This tutorial shows you how to design apps for the supported platforms. Your goal is to learn what type of input, blah, 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 so that your app can work. And to help you along, the tutorial includes some hints. Same text, right? More conversational, something that the user can relate to. A lot of us write tutorials, and we have introductions. Just one second. We have introductions which kind of resemble the one on the left, right? It can be made simpler. Right? Now, not everything here may be translated exactly the way it is supposed to be, but at least make an attempt. Yes, Samantha. Sorry? Meta, what? I didn't get that. Yeah, can you pass the mic? Meta talk. Okay, I don't know what meta talk is. Help about help. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay. I think that's where we need to make things simpler.
I think a good editor would probably just write this entire paragraph out, both of them. On the left and on the right.
It's quite possible, yeah. But just in case your title of the tutorial is not self-explanatory and something, and let's say you need to get into the details of what it is about, this is an example from that, right? So it's quite possible that this piece of text in your company might never make sense. They may say, don't even repeat what the title says, right? But I'm just saying, assuming you write something like this, it can be turned to something on the right. So meta-talk is something that's new to me. Now I understand because you explained it so well. It's help about help, right? That's so much more conversational than saying meta-talk, right? Another thing, I've used you and your, right? You could also use names, fictional names, right? And a lot of our companies have style guides which says if you want to use fictional names, then go with John Smith. So it doesn't have to be a Christian name. It can be any name, right? So pick a name. Sometimes it makes it a lot more personal, right? People can recognize, especially when you're describing scenarios. Ask questions in between. I've not used that in this example, but somebody said here, ask us questions, right? It's not a question that's to test their knowledge, but it's just to lead into what's coming up next. And you're kind of anticipating the user at this point might have got stuck. So let me paraphrase what his problem might be so that he can relate. Okay, my writer understands my problem, and then he continues, right? Avoid jargon. Rate limits on reads from the system are defined on a per user and per application basis, while rate limits on writes into the system are defined solely at the user level. Fairly easy to understand. This is actually from the Twitter API documentation. So the audience also is fairly technical. They would understand this, nothing wrong. But I just took it as an example for jargon. Rate limit is jargon, right? What can we do? There's a limit to how much a user or application can read and a limit to how much a user can write. The heading is rate limits, right? So people know we are talking about rate limits. Why use that word again and again, right? It's like beating on the head with a hammer when there's already a headache, right? So try and make it simple. Avoid jargon. Another example from the same source. Search will be rate limited at 180 queries per 15-minute window. Sorry? In a 15-minute window, you can run up to 180 search queries, right? I've not done magic. It's probably the same sentence length, maybe the same words, but just twisted things around a little bit so that the user can understand things a little better, right? Should you use contractions? Yes, in conversational writing, because we speak that way. Any agreements, disagreements? So if your content is translated localized, then translators will have issues. Okay? Okay. Any other thoughts on contractions? So not all people might understand all contractions. Okay? Yeah, those are the common problems. In our company at least, we've been encouraged to use contractions. But there are, just take 5 more minutes please. 5 more minutes, promise. So there are users who don't understand contractions, and there are translators who will have issues. Okay? So there are exceptions. And in my company, they have a list of contractions we should and should not use. But conversational writing is not about boundaries. You can't define a boundary and say, converse within these boundaries. It's very hard. It's not conversational anymore, right? So the guideline I would like to give you is, how many of you have heard of Bill Clinton in his defense in the Monica Lewinsky case? There's a very famous statement he made. I did not have ... right? He said something. If he had said instead, I didn't have ... would that have, I think that would have been of lesser impact. Because he said, I did not have, and you Google on it, you'll find it, okay? That's a classic example for where a contraction would have actually worked, not worked so as well as the full did not, right? Would not have worked. If you want to emphasize something, say do not, right? It's, in my opinion, again, this is very style, and it's very style related and personal. If you have a choice, it's okay to be inconsistent with regard to contractions. That's my advice, but follow whatever your company says, okay? Yes, but they don't work all the time. A few tips. So I'm not going to dwell on this. The left-hand side is what you already do. All of us do this very well, right? We foresee questions, we give tips, we give feedback. But let's do a little more, right? Let's not get straitjacketed by style and your manager looking over your shoulder or somebody going to be editing your content and so on. Let the words flow, right? When you write it the first time, just let it flow the way it's occurring in your mind. Don't worry about formatting yet. Don't edit, at least initially. Read it aloud and record yourself speaking, right? And then play the recording. Believe me, it will do wonders to how you can change your style to more conversational. And don't overdo it. Last slide. Yeah. So this is an extreme example of conversational writing where they've used the word like a lot, right? If you think this is like the storage volume, blah, 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 right? Don't overdo it. Now, this goes back to a little more formal style where it's still conversational, but slightly less colloquial than what the left-hand example is about, right? So what I'd like to leave at the end of this presentation is don't overdo things. There is a limit to conversational writing as well. Keep that limit in mind. These are a few references. I'm sorry we've run out of time for Q&A, but I'll be available today and tomorrow, so we can, if you are interested in this topic and if you have questions or if you disagree with something I've said, I'd welcome questions. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thanks, Kumar, for the wonderful presentation. We would like Nirupama to come and give him a small token of appreciation. Thanks, Nirupama.